Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to tell you more about the free and open source of digital agency series, and also we will set up all the necessary things that we need to have before we start deploying our services. In this case, I created the documentation in my documentation portal, and when you navigate to docs.webnestify.cloud, you will see the free and open source digital agency book, and here you will see the documentation for this part, for the overview and prerequisites. If you don't know, this series will be all about free and open source software that you can self-host on your own server. In Europe, we must try to comply with all GDPR regulations when we are working with the customer and client data, and on-premises software can help us greatly achieve third-party software independence and to stay compliant because all data will stay on our own servers. We will be focusing on the mainstream alternative to various products like Google Workspace, Analytics, Airtable, Plesk, or Cpanel, and many, many more. You can read more about the strategy, and now I want to talk about the preparation phase. We just name it phase 0, because first we will need to have our domain registrar that will support the glue records. Glue records are DNS records created at the domain's registrar. The record provides a complete answer when the TLD name servers return a reference for authoritative name server for a domain. Also, it will need to support the custom name servers, and without those requirements, we won't be able to set up our DNS and email servers. So make sure to also check the recommendations in the documentation. For the server providers, if you are located in Europe, it is really good to have a DPA protected server provider. You can choose any server provider if you are outside of Europe or GDPR does not apply to you. For the server specifications, in this series, I recommend the following specification. For our dedicated VPN server, I recommend 2 GB RAM. For DNS management, email hosting, and our website, also 2 GB server will be enough. But later, as you add more websites and more clients, you can still upgrade your server. There should be no issue. And for our main Docker instance, where we will deploy various applications and containers like Nextcloud, Plausible, Vault-Warden, Portainer, etc., I recommend to go at least 8 GB of RAM. And also, good thing to know that you will need to choose a server provider that support reverse DNS, that can open email ports for you, and also have a hardware level firewall. For required software, I recommend Termius, but as this series is all about free and open source software, I put the recommendations for other open source and free software like PuTTY, Remina, FileZilla, or WinSCP. You can check the documentation to see what system or what operating system you are on. But in my case, I will use the Terminal Manager, which I highly recommend using it. It has everything built in from SSH, SFTP, SSH key generator. The only downside is that it is not open source, and advanced features that I'm using require subscription, and it costs $120 a year. But if you don't want to stick, if you want to stick to open source, please check all the recommendations there. Also, we will need our Lightspeed Enterprise license if we want to use Lightspeed Enterprise. In this series, we will be using Lightspeed Enterprise, which I highly recommend. But if you don't want to pay or use Lightspeed Enterprise, you can set up Open Lightspeed web server, which is for free. And also you can check differences by clicking on this link in the documentation, and here you can see all the differences between Open Lightspeed and Lightspeed Enterprise. And for the recommendations for compatible domain registrars, I recommend Porkban because I'm using them, and also it will be used in this series. Next provider I recommend is in Namecheap. You can get a cheap domain from Namecheap that supports glue records and custom name servers. Another Europe-based domain registrar, but I never use their services, is Gandhi.net. And I know you can set up your own glue records and also the custom name server. So the choice is completely up to you. But in this series, I will be using the Porkban. For the compatible server providers, as I mentioned, I'm using Hessner because it is a DPA service provider. After you created your account, you can sign the data processing agreement, and you can show it off to your clients. And with Hessner, you can choose from European servers in Germany, European servers in Finland, but also they got several locations in Ashburn, Virginia, and also in Hillsboro, Oregon. So it is up to you if you want to use Hessner. And with Hessner, when we check the pricing, for the 2 GB server, you can go lower as €4.51 every month. And for the 8 GB server, you can get 8 GB server for less than $12, or if you want to get more CPU power, it will be 16.80 every month. So Hessner is pretty cheap, and you will get 20 terabyte traffic. Let me continue with another recommendation. If GDPR does not apply to you, or you want to have servers outside of America or Europe, Linode is the best provider out there. But the issue with, it's not issue, but with Linode, starting budget €50 will not be enough. I recommend pumping up your budget up to 80 if you want to use Linode. And when we check the Linode pricing, 2 GB server is costing $10 a month, and 8 GB server is costing $40 a month. And also with a 2 GB server, you will get only 2 terabytes traffic, and with 8 GB you will get only 5 terabytes traffic. But with Hessner, you have 20 terabytes on every single plan that you choose. So that's why I highly recommend using Hessner. And lastly, I can provide server infrastructure for you under the €40 a month. If you run server from Webnestify, you don't have to worry about server optimization or security configuration. All our servers are optimized and secure out of the box. You can reach me at the email address to receive a special startup discount and many Webnestify customer benefits. So let us proceed with the domain registration. So as I mentioned in this series, I will be using Porkban, but you can use compatible domain registrar. You can use Namecheap, Gandhi.net, or any other that is compatible. So when you are in the Porkban, the process is the same like with any other registrar. You just search for the domain, and you will be presented by the pricing and pick domain you want to use for your hosting agency and for the emails for your customers, and you purchase the domain. And when we have the domain, now we can proceed to the server creation. So as I mentioned, we will be using Hessner. And first, when you open your account in the Client Console, you will need to add the project. And once you are in the project, First, what I like to do is to create the placement groups, which will group multiple servers into a placement group to optimize availability requirements. So we're gonna click the placement group, we name it Free and Open Source Digital Agency, create, that's fine. And at the moment, we can create the temporary firewall that will prevent traffic because we don't have any applications or anything. We just want to keep the port 22 open. Only for now, but when we deploy our VPN server, we will configure all the firewalls again with the new IP addresses. And we can name the firewall, and it will be like SDA. And we create the firewall. When you have firewall, also go to the security, and if you don't have SSH key, you will need to generate SSH key. I will link how you can do it in the description below. Or if you are using Termius, you can generate your SSH key in the mobile application. All you need to do is to copy your public key and paste it right here. Let me clear my clipboard history, and I'm going to paste my SSH key, but I won't show it to you here. So once you have your SSH key, you will name it so you can remember it, and also set the default key for this project, because we will have more servers in this project. And you click add SSH key. Okay, once we have done this, we're gonna add our 3 servers. 2 will be with 2 GB RAM, and the third one will be with 8 GB of RAM. So we're gonna click add server, select your location, and for this we will need to use, let me check, we can use Ubuntu 20.04 for those 2 GB servers, and I'm choosing CPX11, which has 2 core and 2 GB RAM, and yeah, it is AMD EPIC, which is a lot faster than Intel CPUs. You want to disable IPv6 because we don't need IPv6 at this time. Your SSH key is already selected, and select your firewall and also backups. And lastly, the placement group. And we can select that we want to 2 servers, and we want to name it as first one will be our VPN server. So we name it VPN, and second one will be was Cpanel. But you can name it however you want, but don't enter the full domain name because it will not be compatible with the Cpanel. So if you enter like cyberpanel.com, you will have issues with your DNS server and the Cpanel itself. So we need to just add the server name like this. And as you can see, the pricing for those 2 servers with backups are only 12 euros and 30 cents every month, which is really cheap. And you click create and buy. And now we're gonna add our third server. Location will be the same, but this time we will select Debian 11, because the Debian 11 is really good and lightweight for all Docker containers. And in this case, we will select the CPX31, which has 4 shared AMD EPIC CPUs and 8 GB of RAM, and also 20 TB traffic. And once again, we disable public IPv6, we add our SSH key, we select our firewall, we enable backups, and also we want to have our placement group. and we name it services because we will run a lot of containers, and I will show you later uh, what we will be deploying in the future phases. And you click create a buy, and for the server it is 20 euros a month roughly. So once you have your servers deployed, now we're gonna need to add the servers in your terminal manager. As I mentioned, you can use PuTTY, Remina RDP, or even stock of terminal in the macOS, but I really highly recommend Termius because it is a time saver and it has all features combined from other softwares. But the only downside is that it requires subscription and it is not open source. But yeah, maybe in this case we can make exception. So first we will copy the IP address. We will move to Termius, and once you have your account, even a free account, first what you need to do, you will create a group in Termius, and in this group you will add the new host. We name it Cpanel. Let me check. Yes, it will be Cpanel. Then you enter the IP address, and for the username it will be root, and for the set key you will select your public key that you generated in the mobile application. Okay, another server that we will add will be our VPN server. You just copy the IP and we move back to Termius. I'm gonna add a new host. It will be VPN. We paste the IP. Again, username is root, and we select our key that we generated. And lastly, we will add our main services server to the Termius, and we're gonna add a new host. Username root, and we select our SSH key. Once you have those set up, you can just click, you accept the fingerprint, and you can open your servers to check if you have connection. Yeah, everything is ready for a future deployment. So now what we want to do in our DNS registrar, we want to copy IP from the Cpanel instance. And when you go to the DNS, to the settings of the domain in your registrar, first what we want to do is to set up glue records. In Procban you manage glue records. We can remove those. Yes, I want to delete. And for the first host name, we will add ns1 as a name server 1. We enter the IP address, and then we're gonna name ns2 and paste our IP address. And that's it. And for the authoritative name servers, you just name it to ns1.webnestify.org and ns2.webnestify.org. But it will be different because you will have different domain. And you click submit. And that's pretty it. Once we have this done, In the next episode, we will deploy first our VPN server because we will need a dedicated IP address for our security reasons, and then we will deploy our Cpanel instance. And now I want to tell you more about the phase 1, what you can expect. Basically, phase 1 will be all about the services that are mandatory to run. So we will install our VPN, we will configure and install Cpanel. Also, we will, in the part 3, we will set up our container server. Also, we will install the Vault Word and Password Manager. And yeah, also we will install Nginx Proxy Manager, and we will configure a backup system for our Docker containers. So in case of some outage, we can still restore our data. And in the part 4, we will take a look at the Cpanel tweaks, and we will check a Lightspeed web admin interface and set up some configurations that I usually do on every deployments like this for my customers. In the phase 2 is all about the crucial services to run in a digital agency. So in part 1, we will add our VPN node to the container, and also we will install Nextcloud all-in-one. And Nextcloud all-in-one is a basically combination of all of the Nextcloud services that I usually run on my own. So you will get the Nextcloud Office. You will get access to the Nextcloud Talk, which is a Google Meet alternative. Also, we will have backup solutions baked into the Nextcloud. You will get antivirus for your files, full text search within the documents, and also we will get imaginary for your photos collections and those kind of things. In the part 2, we will configure Nextcloud because it is pretty, how can I say it? It requires a little bit of knowledge, so I want to show you how you can configure your Nextcloud for production. In the part 3, we will of course install our Plausible because it is an open source alternative to Google Analytics, and we really need the website analytics. As a part 4, I listed ListMonk. ListMonk is a free and open source newsletter and a mailing list manager. As you can see, you don't have to pay for services like what is his name, MailChimp or any other newsletters or marketing software. In the part 5, we will need our CRM system, and from my experience, I used the perfect CRM in my previous business. And Perfect CRM is open source, and you can also self-host it, and it comes with many features and benefits that you can use in your own agency. Part 6 will be documentation wiki system for everyone, and we will install Bookstack. And the Bookstack is powering this documentation site, as you can see, and it is free and open source, and it's just really simple to use. You can use it as an internal documentation for your employees. Also, you can create accounts for your clients, so everything can be visible only to users you add, or you can set up some public pages like I do in this case. Part 7 will be to-do app for team and businesses, and I recommend Vikunja, and I also use Vikunja, and it just works and it's pretty simple to use. And lastly, as a web developers, we will need our code server, and which is VS Code running on a remote server, and you can access it through your web browser. And also, if you check the documentation, you will get links to every service we will be covering in the phase 2. And for the phase 3, what's coming, it will be all about additional services, and this part is to do because we will have to wait what we want to use. I will ask you what you want to use in your agency. If you have some inspiration, I can create tutorials and guides for you. And every part of this, you will get access to the full documentation. I will create step-by-step guides so you can follow the video along, and hopefully you will run into no issues. But as I mentioned, as my company Webnestify, I can help you along the way with everything, with the configurations and those kind of things. So please, if you like this content or you want to learn more, subscribe to this YouTube channel, like it, and make sure to leave comments so others can find this content as well that can help them with their journey in a digital agency. So yeah, stay tuned for the next week. We will deploy our VPN, we will create our firewalls, and yeah, everything will be following in the order as you can see in this documentation. And probably next week I will add some of my own services in the phase 3 that I want to use, and yeah, also you will have option to choose what you want to use. So yeah, stay tuned and have a nice day. Bye bye.